Okay, so technically we're live, but because I'm editing this, we can start.
Okay,
So I'm
cool.
going to count down for you, just so you know. And also one other thing,
Mhm.
don't be like I'm not saying that you would be. Don't be nervous. Just it's what you and I are just
I've got
chatting.
my cup of tea here, so it's fine.
Okay, great. I sent you those outline just
Yeah,
so that you would have an idea of where I'm looking to take the
sure.
conversation. And one quick question.
Mhm.
Now, we can talk about Feast, right? You just don't want to talk about how
Oh,
Feast generates money.
yeah, I think that's the kind of part where probably not so much want to go in that region. Feast, yeah, I'm more than happy to explore that and talk about various things about that. But I think the financial aspect, not so much, only because obviously the volunteering things, there's nothing corporate about it whatsoever. So I kind of want to stay clear ever so slightly about, obviously we have funding towards that, but if we can sort of stay away from that, that'll be perfect.
Okay, cool. And I'm assuming people who are listening to this would understand that if a vendor is working at Feast, they're making some money from it. Like we don't really have to, you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, no, not at all. Yeah,
Like,
definitely. I mean,
otherwise, why would
anything.
people do it?
Exactly, yeah. Anything we sort of generate, it goes straight back into it. So whether it's a case of we get, a profit from the month, it goes straight into the following month to build more things or to create more things for the younger kids.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to count down.
Cool.
Hey guys, back on Breaking Walls, and today my guest is Kieron Lewis. And Kieron and I are fellow graphic designers. He's also what he would consider a visual artist. Kieron is located in London, and he's somebody that I've known for the last few years as someone who is able to cull together various skills and interests to help push his own creative career forward. So the topic that I wanted to sit and discuss with him today is ways to harvest your skills to become both financially and creatively independent. So I'd like to welcome Kieron. So I'd like to welcome Kieron to the podcast.
Hey, hi James, how you doing?
Great, thank you. And I'd like to ask you first, you're an artist.
Mhm.
I don't think any 5-year-old kids who like art think, I'm going to grow up and be a graphic designer. I'm not sure that anybody really thinks that
Yeah,
when we first become lovers of art.
no.
Where does your love of art come from?
Right. Well, growing up, like I guess like any other sort of kid growing up, I was really into cartoons. I love my cartoons. I'd wake up, really, really early, watch cartoons. I'd draw a lot of the cartoons I'd watch. And I mean, obviously now we call it animator, or we call that more of a, visual thing. But when you're a 10-year-old boy, waking up to watch cartoons and drawing, you don't look at it to, the detail aspect of it back then. And I kind of feel, doing little drawings and having a little notepad of me back then as a kid, that's what I used to do quite a lot of. So yeah, I used to have a notepad of me every day, and I would just do drawings and doodles on the way to school or on the way to friend's house. And I think that sort of love of drawing and documenting anything I see, but from a visual point of view, is kind of where my interest in design, I guess, really originated from the start.
Until you went to college/university, what kind of school or professional training in art did you have?
Okay, so in college I studied graphic design, but I did a lot of life drawing. So a lot of life drawing, some bit of animation, a lot of theory based as well, contextual studies we call it over here, which is more the sort of theory aspect to design work. And again, I mean, I really, really enjoyed learning about the sort of theory side to design. Obviously knowing the visual aspect too, but again, the theory side is just as important. So for me, I did a lot of that in college. And yeah, first year at university, I actually studied game design. So it wasn't actually graphic design at the time. And it took me a year to realize it wasn't for me. But that being said, I mean, I learned a lot in that 1 year course. I mean, I studied life drawing, studied animation and game design. And I mean, it does link ever so slightly, obviously, to design, not so much graphic design, but, an element of, and, sometimes it takes a year to realize it's not what you want to be doing, but you can sort of utilize those skills and sort of go on and move on, which I did do. And I ended up finishing my degree at Winchester, studying graphic design, marketing and branding.
Okay. I'm glad that you brought up the term theory just now.
Mm.
Maybe people who are not artists or designers, they don't realize that there's a psychological way of thinking that goes into a design thesis or an execution.
Mm.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
Design theory.
Yeah.
If you were to describe to someone who is not an artist what that actually means, how would you describe what it means to think about design theory as you execute whatever it is, a website, a flyer, you name it.
I think the theory base comes down to communication. I think sitting down and speaking to people. I think design is very much opinion based. I think the great thing about doing design is there is a very wrong or right answer when it comes to opinions. But when it comes to the theory side of things, I think it's a perfect example I could say, for example, is if you have you've got a pitch and you've got your target audience. And obviously, in order to find out about the target audience, there is no visual design work to it. It's a case of speaking to your audience and finding out exactly what they want, what they feel could work well, and sort of using that information and basically bringing that onto the board and bringing as visual as you can with it. So I think it comes down to a lot of speaking, reading a lot of books. There's a lot of really good books out there on design as well. A lot of people think designing is all about pretty pictures, but there's a lot more to it. I think when it comes to researching various artists and designers and designers itself, it crosses so many spectrums of different things, whether it's architecture or graphic design or game design, but there's always a linkage of some sort. And yeah, things like great novels, there's always a lot of good books out there to get some really research about it.
I'm also glad that you just said, when in talking about a pitch, that you're not actually usually presenting full-blown designs during a pitch. I mean, you might have some comp work done to show some visuals as to back up the thinking behind it, but sort of like we're talking about today, when you talk about harvesting skills together to create a whole, design without some sort of meaning behind it is just pretty pictures. And generally, I think that's what separates good design from bad design, in my opinion, would be the function of why it's being done. The why is really, why we do anything in the world is really the why behind it, not just that we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so now you just mentioned another word, communication. You're somebody who has naturally a strong inclination to have community ties and talk to people. Why are you not afraid to put yourself out there in the world and make connections with people? Some people find that intimidating. Why is it something that you feel you want and need to do for yourself?
Well, I'll tell you what, James, it's so funny you mentioned that, because I mean, I always say to my girlfriend that I'm quite a shy character. She says, no, you're not. You're the opposite of that. But I think the way I find it is that doing, graphic design, doing design as a whole is something I've done as a young child. I've learned about it. I've enjoyed it. So when it comes to speaking to people or, making, nice friends with people in my sort of sector, I think it comes almost naturally because, again, I enjoy what I do. I find it very comfortable, very easy to talk to people, especially when it's my own work. So, for example, if someone says to you, let's talk about what are you working on, what are you doing, I always think to myself, that's probably the easiest thing possible to do, because at the end of the day, you've designed that work personally. If anyone can talk about it better, it's you. So, there shouldn't. I always find personally there isn't much of a sort of nerve-wracking or anything scared about speaking about your own personal work, because again, I enjoy what I do and I find it quite comfortable to do. But that being said, obviously everyone gets nervous. If I have an interview of some sort, I always get nervous. But I mean, as long as you've got the facts down and everything you need to do, and it's a case of drawing a communication and getting that skills and speaking to people very clearly and getting that message across.
Sure, and it stands to reason, obviously, that if you're close to something and you know about it, you're prepared, and that's going to quell a lot of nervous feelings because you know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
In the time that I've known you, you've been everything from an editor to a graphic designer to a community organizer, like we just mentioned. But now we just spoke about some of those things individually. I'm curious if there's a common thread that brings them together in terms of things that stand out to you that you're most passionate about, that give you the confidence to talk and speak to these things on multiple levels and be not just a designer or be not just somebody who sits behind a computer, somebody who gets out there.
Yeah.
Where does that passion lie for you?
Do you know what? I almost think this stems back at my first year at university. I think for anyone who's never been to university, obviously you've got various things you go through the university career. You learn how to cook for yourself for one, how to live on your own, but you meet a lot of people who you necessarily would have met if you didn't go to university. And I think for me, I worked with a lot of young designers from various disciplines, whether it was fashion, graphics, fine art, textiles, and it's those people who, you wouldn't meet them unless you had studied in university. So for me personally, I've got quite a nice connection with from various disciplines, and I've worked with them over the years on self-directed projects and public projects, community projects, and I think that's where it kind of, my interest and passion does lie working with, you know, young people, working with students, especially, and graduates, because again, you've got a massive wave of fantastic, you know, young artists and designers, and it's trying to get that platform out there for them to, you know, to utilize their skills. And you know, I've spoken to various people from my years, and it's always interesting hearing their stories as to why they've become why they're doing what they're doing. Everyone's got their own story, you know, and it's interesting because, again, when you're in the working world, from my personal experience, you know, everyone's kind of lived it and they've done it, and you kind of lose that almost drive and passion. You know, working 9 to 5, over it becomes, you know, the norm, and there's very much passion, much interest. It's all about making money. And I kind of think to myself, well, where does that passion start and where does it end? You know, try and keep that continuous. At university, especially students at first year, that spark of wanting to, you know, do well because you love it and enjoy it, that's so evident throughout every single year. And I think, you know, working people like that, that's only going to project really cool things for the future. So yeah, that's where my sort of passion, I guess, that thread of the various things I've done over the few years, it all kind of stems down to working with young artist designers and sort of knowing their backstory, really, and finding out more.
So then you would definitely say that the camaraderie and the common ground that you found while in university, because I really like that you said there are other things that you learn when you're in college besides the curriculum. You learn how to be an adult on your own for the first time.
Sure.
And there's a certain amount of empowerment and independence that happens while you're having all this fun and chasing your passions. Would you say that since you left university, is that's part of what drives you then, the desire to continue to find that collegiate common ground and camaraderie with people that are your peers?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, my final uni project was very much a case of, and it was an editorial project helping and, you know, setting a foundation for graduates. So in a way, when I left university, I already left having my, you know, my final major project being something I'm very passionate about. And I mean, my first job leaving university, it was quite a nice one actually, because that stemmed off from when I was 16. I was doing an internship in London when I was 16, and I was going back every summer from the age of 16. And when I left uni, they offered me a full-time. So that was my connection way into it. And a lot of people that I used to work with back then knew a lot of the work I was doing whilst at uni, because obviously at college I was 16, and you know, every year as I went from college right to uni, I was going back every summer to work in London. So they were always seeing what work I was doing, seeing what I was up to. And I think when I left uni and I worked there, obviously as a junior designer full-time, they knew what I was doing. They knew what I was capable of doing. But what was quite nice is they gave me a lot of, not a lot of free reign, but you know, the opportunity to express myself, because they've seen what I can do when it's self-directed. And I think that's, in a way, very, very fortunate, because most people, when they get into their first job, especially from a junior level, it's for one, it's traumatic, it's daunting, it's a new experience, but there's also that, you know, oh, how much can I say, how much can I really get across, you know, my interest and passion. And you know, from my perspective, I was very fortunate to go into this first job, and you know, they knew who I was, they knew what I could do, and I was able to basically go to town with a lot of designs that I did whilst being there, and it was, yeah, fantastic, a lot of fun.
And so you were lucky in that you were going into an environment that you were at least moderately comfortable with beforehand. I think, what can we do, in your opinion, how can we help people? Because no matter where in the world we are, you're in London right now, I'm in New York.
Yeah.
People, they do often look back at their college experience as one of the greatest times of their lives, both from a social standpoint, because we all party in college, you know, and you're having a great time.
Yeah, of course.
But even from the ability, like you're saying, to explore your passions, to do good work, and to really push yourself in new directions. But then we get out into the work world, and a lot of people lose that drive and ambition. It's almost like their confidence gets knocked down, because it's like you're saying, how much can I talk? Where can I find that seam that allows me to be comfortable? You know the answer to this, I think, based on your threading of communities, but I do think it's really important that people empower themselves and realize that that college experience doesn't have to end up here in your mind.
Not at all.
How can we help people refine that confidence and realize that, okay, you don't have to do something that you're unhappy about for the rest of your life? What can we do?
I think my advice would be is, you know, again, it's the stigma of when you leave university, it's what next, you know, you find your first job, it's a big big step, massive step. But I think the one thing that you could do, especially if you go into your first job and it's not the job that you want to really be in, but you find yourself in it, I think the one thing from a designer's point of view, which is very important, is almost doing side projects, doing something which keeps your mind and your passion still afloat. Because I think, like we spoke about, when you work your 9 to 5 and you get home, you're knackered. You don't really want to, maybe do a lot of work and have that passion. But when you've got something you're really into, you can always substitute, your 9 to 5 job on a weekend, say, and really embrace your passion then. So I mean, I know a lot of friends, who left with fantastic grades at my uni, really good grades, but like most students when they leave university, very difficult to find work. So a lot of them have gone into maybe to retail jobs, or jobs that they wouldn't necessarily thought they'd be doing. But whilst they're doing that, they've also got their side projects, they've got their freelance projects, and that's where you can clearly see they've got an interest and a drive for it. So I mean, what I would advise for people who are coming out of uni, say, and they can't find their ideal job and feel that, the passion might die, I kind of think to myself, well, like any, 20, between 20 and 30-year-old people, you need to have money, first of all, to live, which is a necessity. So, you work and you work to earn, which is fine. But I always think it's very important to keep that passion, that drive, whether it's something as a freelance or a side project, or even if it's something you do every other weekend. But it's keeping your brain and your interest still afloat, like I said, and keeping that drive still there. Because within time, it's all about patience. The more you look, the harder you find. You will eventually find your ideal job role. And it can take, for some people, it could be months, even years. But I'm a firm believer in you work hard, you get the benefits. So yeah, that's my motive. So yeah, for anyone who's has that idea, then I always think it's positive thinking, and hopefully it gets you cut forward.
Do you find the combination of patience plus persistence to be difficult for yourself?
That's a good question. Sometimes, yeah. I think, for anyone, it's a tricky one, because obviously everyone in a different boat, everyone's got different situations. I always feel, the patience issue is always a tricky one, because obviously depends how much patience you've got, first of all, isn't it? I think if you're a patient person, then it could be easier. If you're not so much, then it's difficult. But, you can always find that balance by being patient, by doing, like I said, your own side projects. Because whilst you're looking for your actual ideal job, you can also spend some time on the weekend, or even some time in the evenings, and do a little small project. It hasn't got to be a project which is going to make money. It could be a project just for yourself, just so you know how you can still think that, right, I still got that spark that I had at uni in my first year. Why not keep continuing that into graduation as well? And I think to myself that there is that almost slight stigma that when you leave university, right, it's a suit and tie, and it's a very much a case of, right, heads down, and yeah, it's a serious thing. It's work, which is obviously everyone knows, but there is that drive and that passion where you can still keep that and harness that right through, even when you graduate into your later years. And I know a lot of people, especially from places I've been at and worked at, that are a lot older than me, and heard their stories, and it's amazing. I mean, I worked with a guy, I don't go too far, but I worked with a guy at my sort of previous place, and he left university, really good grades, but again, he couldn't find his ideal job, and he did a lot of projects, side projects, and that was definitely in his favor, because now where he's working at, it's it's a good job, really good place, but he's got that motive and that drive, and you can clearly see that from that, when he had it from when he left university right down to, I mean, he's 35 now, and it's evident that he's very passionate about doing what he does, and he's a husband, married with 2 kids, and it can be done. You don't have to necessarily be a 20-year-old fresh out of uni to have that passion, and still not have that if you weren't later on in your life. So yeah.
I think maybe you would agree with me, based on what you just said, that by diversifying ourselves, like you're saying, okay, so we have to work. That's a fact of life. Sometimes the job that you currently have might not be something that is the most breathtaking, passionate thing to you. But if you allow that to be the only basket that you put all your eggs in, that's where that creation of a zombie human comes in, where you just go to work and don't really care about life anymore. But by diversifying your interests, it helps lead to something. Because like you're saying, okay, so if you're working in retail, you are learning something that you wouldn't have expected. And then if you do what you really are passionate about on the side, suddenly you might pull some of those things you learned from retail into your passion and move forward.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, even the business side too. I think one thing which, I mean, I personally found as well, and I guess, I mean, my girlfriend and I spoke about this a few times, is that, you know, some universities obviously have their different ways of working, but, you know, from where I left university, it was a fantastic university, first of all, it was a really good uni, but the business side to how design works, and even, you know, jobs as a whole, they don't really necessarily set you up for that. And I always think to myself, when it comes to any, you know, the business side to a design sector, you need to definitely experience that for yourself firsthand. And it's never easy, that's for sure. I mean, the first book I have actually had, I read a book called, not the most easy of titles, but it's The Business Side to Creativity. And it's a big chunky book, but that gave me a bit of an insight. I mean, I'd read it on the train journey to work, and this was my first ever job. And that gave me an insight into the business side to it, and understanding, you know, well, you know, design has various sectors, but the financial part of it is also an element which is part of it. And, you know, it's important to have a good knowledge of that and to understand how that works. And university maybe not necessarily sets you up primarily for that, but that's where, you know, you go into various other job roles, such as, like you said, retail, and places where, you know, you're learning these skills firsthand. And then once you go into your actual chosen field or your chosen job, then you've got that knowledge ready to excel.
Do you think that there's anything that, I mean, and we both studied graphic design, but we went to two different schools. So chances are there was a lot of similarities and a lot of differences the way we studied at college. Yeah. Do you think that there's anything truly that can be taught in college that can prepare you for what it is like out there in that work world? Because it is dog eat dog. Or is it just that you have to be in it? Baptism by fire is the only way to truly figure out who you are in that situation.
I think it's a bit of both. I think that's probably the answer I would give. I think in a sense that, you know, my uni career was probably the best 3 years of my life. You know, it was fantastic. You know, you meet, like I said, you meet friends who you necessarily wouldn't met. I met my girlfriend, for example. I met her during uni, and, you know, you find all these different things that you didn't know about yourself and what you can actually do, you know, as a designer whilst at uni. But then that being said, when you're in the working world, especially if you, so for example, I used to work in advertising, especially if you work in advertising, you learn, you know, how to deal with clients, for example. And learning how to deal with clients is, like anyone who works in advertising will know, it can't be the easiest thing in the world, but you would never necessarily know that at uni. And again, you have to experience that in the working world to understand how you work with clients and understand how briefs and deadlines are. I mean, deadlines are a massive important one, because, you know, your deadline in university is never the deadline you get in real world. And I've learned that, obviously, you know, firsthand going into your first job. And again, it's experience. You know, you make mistakes like anyone does, and you make mistakes from college and from uni and from even, you know, working full time. But it's how you learn from the mistakes, you know, which goes on further, and which makes you into a better designer. You know, I'm forever learning, and that's what I've always told, you know, people I've worked with, and, you know, my new boss as well. She, you know, she's very capable of, you know, knowing what I can do and what I can't do. But you know, I've said to her, I'm here to learn. I'm here to, you know, do the best I can do. And I think most people, you know, most believe university very optimistic. And I think, you know, that's the passion that you should keep. I think within time, obviously, it's very difficult, like we said, you know, to find work. And that's just across the board, really, whether it's design or any job, especially design in particular. It's hard because you've got some fantastic designers that you're up against in a way. And I think to myself, you know, if you've got that interest and that passion and, you know, that motive to want to learn, that eagerness to want to learn, I think you go into your new job and people look into it and they think, well, you know, we're going to invest some time and effort into this individual because there's a clear indication that they want to learn. And I think that's the thing. They don't want to get, from what I would believe, and this is my perspective, they wouldn't necessarily, especially from a junior perspective, they wouldn't necessarily get this junior in if they knew it all, because otherwise there would be a midway or senior. It's a case of getting a junior in and nurturing them and, you know, giving them the time all the day to learn more. And then obviously, you know, if they invest in you, then you invest your time and effort into them. And that's the kind of mutual respect that, if you're lucky enough, especially to find a job, then yeah, that's the perfect kind of job to learn. And especially when you start, you know, from a junior level and you make your way up within a certain company, you know, you've got that lovely relationship that you maybe not necessarily would have gotten if you have gone to various other workplaces and done other things, because you've got that connection with friends and you worked with various clients, but you've got that relationship which you built over a period of time. So yeah, that's my belief onto it anyway.
You've been lucky enough to have working environments that were nurturing to you and fostered the comfortableness in you to make a mistake. You know, basically, you do learn from mistakes, like you're saying, but I also think you learn from taking risks, and in that you take risks, there's a chance that you're going to make a mistake. If someone is in an environment where they don't have that kind of nurturing currently, what can we tell them to instill with them the confidence in themselves to take risks and know that you're going to make mistakes, but that your heart and your mind will have been in the right place at that moment, and you learn. You know, sometimes you're going to take an honest chance and it's not going to go your way. That doesn't even necessarily mean that if you did the exact same thing again, it wouldn't go your way. It just happened to not go your way that time. How can we help people have the confidence to take those risks? Is it community? Is it fostering a stronger peer community?
I think it's an interesting one, actually, that topic. I think, again, it can come down to the employer. I think as well, especially who you're working with. Every agency, you know, every place, whether it's in the US or the UK, everyone does something differently, you know. And I think it comes down to, you know, a bit of understanding the situation you're currently in. You know, if you're in a place where you're fairly new and, you know, obviously you're nervous, which is like most people, especially for a very new experience. But I think to myself that, you know, if you're fortunate enough to have people who you work alongside, especially people who are above you, who oversees your work, if you've got that good relationship with them, it makes it much easier to communicate with them and to say to them, you know, well, you know, there's nothing worse than pretending like you know what you're doing and then you do it and you get it wrong. Because I think to myself, well, you set yourself up for a massive fall. And, you know, again, it's easy to say, I know, I understand that, when you're actually in the situation yourself. But I always feel to myself, there isn't any shame with, if you don't know what it is, and then to learn about it and then to get it right. That's the way you should be doing it. You know, I think if you don't know what you're doing and you generally don't know how you're doing it, I mean, some people can wing it and get it, you know, fortunate quite right. But if you're anything like me, you need to know the facts first before you start anything. And I think, you know, there's been times for me personally where, you know, I might have been given a brief and it's been, you know, very tricky, and it's a case of breaking it down. And even once you've broken it down, you find it tricky to digest it. It's worth definitely, you know, sitting just face to face with your director or someone, you know, who does oversee your work and explain to them, you know, I've had a good shot at trying to understand this, but could you, you know, explain it to be a bit more in depth? And I always think they're a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? I think they're a lot more wanting to give you the time of day when they know that you're genuine about your approach to them, rather than trying very hard and then, you know, not knowing what you're doing and then, like I said, blagging it. Because I think they understand that, well, this person clearly has an indication that, you know, they can see what they can do and what they can't do. And I think that's very important, knowing that. If, you know, obviously you're forever learning, yes, but, you know, it's important to kind of know, especially in the working world with clients, you know, what you're capable of doing and what you're not, because not everyone can do every job. You know, that's the thing, and that's why you have specialists. So that's where I think to myself, if you're fortunate enough to have people who oversee your work that you've got a good relationship with, then in all fairness, it should be quite a fairly easy approach to explain that. But if you don't, which sometimes can happen, my advice would be, my honest advice would be to probably find somewhere else. I mean, I mean, sometimes, again, you have to work at various places to find out what is the ideal place for you. You know, everyone's first job is never their favorite job. And that's, you know, speaking to people a lot older than me, I've definitely learned that from them. So, you know, again, if you're in a situation where it is very hard to leave out of a rut, as it were, I would say to, you know, keep the motive and, you know, keep working hard and, you know, pushing towards forward. But, you know, keep your options open. You know, if you're young and you're fresh out of uni and you've got those talents, you know, the world's your oyster, as it were. You know, you work hard towards something and you do it on your side, and you freelance projects if you can. And then, yeah, you just take the bull by the horns. And then, again, like you said, you take risks and sometimes they pay off. And that's where, when they do, then it's happy days from there onwards, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that fear that maybe people have, like, oh, I can't leave this job. I don't have any confidence in myself. Even if they're not saying that, I have no confidence in myself. That's how they're carrying themselves and internalizing their own, who they are.
Of course.
By taking those risks, you will build confidence in yourself, because let's say you and I get fired in 3 weeks, just argument's sake. Are we going to be dead in 4 weeks? No, we'll figure out a way to live. You know what I mean? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, totally.
I wonder also, even like you just said, about approaching your bosses, mentors, superiors, and doing it honestly and saying, look, I don't really understand this. I'm trying to digest it. Can you help me out? I think maybe people forget that from an opposite perspective. Like, let's say somebody asked you for advice because they felt like you could give them help, kind of like this interview right at this moment. People need to know that if you go to your bosses honestly and ask them questions, they'll probably want to help you because you are respecting their intelligence. And when your intelligence is respected, that's how you form that camaraderie. Like, yes, let me help you.
No, I totally agree. I think, you know, and also as well, I mean, you have to remember these, okay, they're your boss, yes, but they are human beings. You know, right. It boils down to the fact we are, you know, we're all humans. And, you know, you get some, you know, bosses, I'm sure, that are maybe not so nice and some that are lovely. And, you know, you got to find that almost human side, I think, you know, when you, I mean, especially with my line of work, especially with advertising as well as a whole, there's a lot of the social element to it, which is good. So obviously, you know, you go out for drinks on a Friday night, or you go out for, you know, Christmas dues or summer dues or things like that. And I think when you build relationships outside of the office, that is so important, because I think to myself, you know, you work 9 to 5, yep, okay, that's cool. Obviously, you do a good job, but you also got to have that people skills, which I think is so important to not necessarily be a robot. You know, go in and, you know, be honest, of course, but also have that, you know, people skills, and know that, you know, whoever you're working alongside, you need to be able to have a good relationship. I think it's very important to have a nice relationship on and off the grid with who you work with, because I think that's very, very important, you know, very, very important. That's my perspective anyway.
Right. And I think based on what you just said, if you're a junior, or even if you're a middle level position and you're trying to talk to, you know, the executive creative director, give that person every opportunity to be a human and have a human relationship with them. And if at that point that boss seems to have no human qualities, I don't think then that you would fear leaving that job as much, because you'd say, well, I tried so hard to find the human side of this person. They don't seem to have one. Why do I want to be here? And then you'll be galvanized to go move on anyway. Yeah,
I mean, if their eye starts blinking red on one side, you think, well, yeah, it's the Terminator, so you don't want to necessarily work with them. But yeah, no, I totally agree. You know, it's the truth. Yeah, I think you find that human quality to it, you know, and yeah, I think with our line of work, it is very, very hard, but there's also the fun element to it, you know, and the places I've been at, and, you know, I've been at a few really nice agencies that I worked with. You know, there's always been, at every single place I've been at, that social element to it, and that definitely draws you much closer as a group, as a team, you know, to have that, you know, you go out for drinks and you know more about them, but also you have that working side, and I think you got to find the balance, you know.
Yeah, and I also think that as guys like you and I advance ourselves in our careers, and we get a better understanding of good methods and bad methods to build morale in a team, and have people find their niche within a team. If we grow up professionally in environments where we do have our human side fostered, then in 20 years when you and I are at a much different level, we'll be doing that and passing it down as well. And that's when we're talking about harvesting, you know, different skills. Sorry, 1 second. When we're talking about harvesting different skills, happiness and confidence are skills that are not necessarily tangible, like I know how to draw with charcoal, but they're just as important.
No, definitely. That I mean, skills such as, you know, when the sort of friends that you meet at university, I mean, you're going to find young juniors potentially at the place you're at too, but also you need to remember that you're going to be working with a lot more older and senior people, and that's a very interesting quality, because especially when you're at uni and, you know, you're working with people primarily your age range, that when you leave university, if you're say 23, you could be working with someone who's potentially 48, and it's, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be, you know, boring or nothing in common, but I think to myself that, you know, that relationship and that sort of skill sets that you sort of share with that different person of that age range is kind of important to find that notion between the two, and to understand that, well, you know, they're just, you know, I'm sure they've graduated and, you know, done what they've done, but almost utilize that as a what's the word now, a point whereby, you know, within time you can sort of learn from them and sort of listen to, you know, their experiences, because again, if they're in your line of work, and especially if they're along when it comes down to your, say for example, you're a junior and you're working alongside a senior, which I was doing previously. The senior was a lot older than me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have nothing in common. It's a case of, you know, what did you do at uni, and, you know, I've seen his work on his website, and I've seen stuff that he's done, and it makes you more hungry as a younger person to want to get to that level. And yeah, I think it's definitely a cool thing when you work with someone a lot older than you in a say an agency or design agency, because you know you've got that idea of wanting to learn from someone which you necessarily maybe wouldn't have got if you were at university.
Yeah, and I also think that it's important for people to remember that, yeah, we are going to learn from our senior designers, but they might learn from us too.
Definitely.
Common ground is shared between two people, regardless of the age, like you're saying.
It's funny you mentioned that, actually, because one of the guys I used to work with, again, the same guy at my sort of second job, although, you know, I mean, I always admired this guy. His work was amazing, and, you know, he had his wife, his kids. He was still able to, you know, to still be awesome at his line of work. But one thing he'd always say to me, you know, Kieron, I don't know how you find the time to go to the exhibitions in the evenings, because usually my girlfriend and I would go to, you know, galleries or things during the week, and even when you're working late, we would still find time afterwards to go. And I think to myself, it's quite cool, because obviously for him, he was looking from my perspective, thinking, you know, it's nice to still be that, you know, fresh out of uni, and to still have that interest to still want to go to various places and visit galleries and exhibitions and to do that. And I guess within time, and it's just the way life is, really, you know, the older you get, obviously the more responsibilities you get, and especially when you go down the path of marriage or, you know, kids, you're never going to be able to do various things like go into galleries and whatnot, for sure. But, you know, if you can find ways of fitting that in when you can, which, like I said, my friend used to do that as well, then it's a cool thing to do. And I've always thought to myself, you know, when I get older, hopefully I'm not so old I can't even move anymore, but, you know, it's a case of, you know, going to galleries, and especially degree shows. I mean, I've got a thing for my girlfriend and I, we always go to any degree show, if we can reach, obviously get there in time after work. But yeah, we love going to degree shows and seeing what's on, and especially new talent coming out of uni. So yeah, doing things like that and fitting that in your actual full-time schedule is very, very important, I feel.
And I think it goes also to what we're saying. Life is about finding happiness often and chasing passions, and that's basically what you're just saying. Because you're passionate about design and you want to continue learning, you have a desire to go to these degree shows, you have a desire to connect with people, because you found something in yourself that you want to pursue. And for people that maybe haven't done that, that's really what they have to do to galvanize themselves and to light that fire under themselves as well.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
I'd like to talk to you about the profile book for a second, because I think it'll give a good visual reference, or in this case, audio reference, as we go forward in this conversation. You mentioned it briefly earlier that the profile book was your senior thesis project, essentially, at university.
Yeah.
And you are the lead designer, or you were the lead designer on it. David Sinnott was the founder, correct? And Nicola, your current girlfriend, she was the editor on that.
It was, yeah.
Where was the passion in that for you, the profile book? For somebody, obviously I know what the profile book was, but for somebody listening who doesn't, can you describe what that was to them?
Sure. Okay, so the profile book was, the idea of it initially was to create an online blog, which would basically showcase student and graduate artwork. So the idea was, obviously we would, you know, speak to various artist designers. Primarily, they would submit a lot of artwork to the blog. And the idea was, once we have, you know, some really, really nice artwork on that blog, try and filter that down into print. And obviously my final uni project, it's, you know, like anyone, you get that one chance to really make a good go at it. It's your final uni project. You know, you've had 3 years of learning from lecturers and from, you know, from students. You know, what is the one thing you can do to set yourself apart from the crowd, as it were. So yeah, I had the idea of, I worked with Davidson and Nicola on both the project, but the actual publication and the creation of it was my sole uni project. And I've always had an interest in working with students and artists and designers. So I knew when it came to my final project, I wanted to create something which would almost showcase everything I've learned in terms of editorial skills, in terms of, you know, writing, blogging, and obviously design. But it would also be almost a starting block, because I knew that, I mean, at that time, I didn't know I was going to be offered a full-time at my, you know, the first job. So I knew, obviously, you know, coming out of uni, I've got to find a job like most people do. So I was very determined that this final project that I make, this final book that I create, I can share that out with various art directors, various creative directors, and almost start an organic conversation in itself with that. You know, that's my final uni project. This is the best of what I can do. So, you know, what's the thoughts on this? And without stemming too much off, that actually led to one of my internships. Actually, just going to someone sharing the book, and him finding out, oh, this is cool, but also what are you doing now? And at the time, I was free, so I'd done an internship at a place called IPC Media, which is in London. But again, it was that connection of showing someone your work and having a very organic conversation and just find out what about your work is. And again, that in itself can stem off to various things. In my case, it led to an internship. So you can almost have that very cool connection where you just share something like a very cool piece of artwork and have that communication, and you'll be surprised how far it can go. So the profile book in itself was definitely something where I shared it with a lot of art blogs and a lot of people and students, not necessarily to see what works and what's great about it, but what doesn't work. I mean, I would speak to a lot of art directors and find out what do you not like about it, and every feedback I got back was all constructive, very, very good. It was stuff that especially when you're your friends. I mean, I've got a lot of my closest friends came down to my degree show and they saw my artwork, and your family comes down and they all say nice things about it, which is great. But it's those very sort of senior people who can not be afraid to tell you that's bad for XYZ, and that's for me, that's very important, because I always think to myself, well, you use that criticism to produce something better for the next time you do something similar to this. And that's the way you kind of go forward, not knowing what's great about it, but what's not great about it, and then working around that to make it better.
And it's incredibly important to not be defensive when someone gives you constructive criticism. Now, granted, if somebody is like, that sucks, I mean, that goes to the well, what is that? That doesn't do anything for me. But if somebody says to you, look, this looks like hell, and here's how you can fix it. Yeah. Then you have to, that's how you learn. How else? You didn't learn that 5 + 4 = 9 until you said it was 8 and the teacher said it's 9. That's the only way that you learn that. So, and I think for somebody like yourself, it's interesting. My college, I was a graphic design major, but that was lumped under a larger umbrella major along with illustration and advertising called communications design. Okay. So, and really graphic design is the art of communicating in a lot of ways, but life is also the art of communicating. If we're afraid to communicate, like you're saying, how can we get better? That's throughout centuries, people learn from their mentors, but they don't learn from their mentors by constantly getting patted on the back. You have to be willing to be told that it wasn't good. We're not perfect, but we're working towards getting better. Yeah,
I mean, the way I sort of see it is a perfect example. You mentioned that. Think Karate Kid. I mean, for anyone who's seen the film Karate Kid, he's been beat down a few times to do what he does, and without staying too far off, that mentality of having to fall over a few times to understand how to walk, I think that is a very important aspect in design, but also in life in general.
Absolutely. I want to jump right into Feast for a second.
Cool.
Can you describe to someone who's listening what Feast is and why you are volunteering at Feast? Because I know that you and we just spoke right now about you following things that you want to do, whether it go to degree shows, going out. And it's also good that, you have a girlfriend who has commonality with you and you share these things together, which is partly why she's your girlfriend, that you have this in common.
Yeah.
But something like Feast, which is a large project to undertake, it's all on your own time. You're not generating a salary to it. How did you get involved in it? Where did you see something that ignited your passion within it, and why are you currently doing it?
Cool. Okay. So it's like a start of how I get involved with this. So I got involved with Feast because, first of all, when I was working at my previous job, I worked with a freelancer, a really nice guy called Ben, and it was his job at the time. He was currently doing it, and he was moving on to do other things. And we had a chat, and I knew about Feast, I knew about West Norwood, but I didn't really know that much about it. And when he explained to me about what he was doing, and he mentioned that he was leaving, he was stopping doing it because he had to move on and timing. And he mentioned to me, do I know anyone who will be willing to do it? And instantly, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I've always wanted to do volunteering of some sort. I've never had a chance to do any volunteering. Obviously, I had a chance to do it, but to actually put it to words and actually do it was a new thing for me. So when I knew about having the opportunity to do it, I jumped on board. So I spoke to, volunteering first of all, Feast first of all is a volunteering powered market. So there's various volunteers involved. But Lucy, which is someone who founded Feast first of all, who started Feast up, we had a little talk in February it was, to see my work, see what I can do. And yeah, from February onwards, I got the gig as lead designer. So from then onwards, I've basically been working as lead designer for Feast. And for those who don't know what Feast is basically a community, it's a very small festival, which is in the area of West Norwood, South London. And all it does is it celebrates what West Norwood has to offer, whether it's through food, whether it's through music, art and design. But one thing that's amazing about West Norwood, especially in that area, it's a very multicultural society. I mean, London as a whole is anyway, but West Norwood in particular, I mean, you find various people from various backgrounds, which for me is amazing because for one, we've got our little food market, which is called a food fair, and I mean, the different types of food you'll get there is probably food you would never try anywhere else, which is amazing because you've got, you know, from Indonesian right down to Jamaican, right down to Colombian. And it's those things that you wouldn't necessarily get or even knew it was in your area unless you'd gone to Feast to experience it firsthand. So again, that's one of the fairs which Feast has to offer. Another one, which is my personal favorite, is the artisan market. And now the artisan market is basically where a lot of startup art and design, whether it's individuals or groups of people, and they come down for the day and they sell their artwork. And they have their own little stalls and they're able to set their artwork, they have their business cards out, and it's basically a nice day to actually see their artwork and even to speak to the individuals behind the work. I think that is really, really cool because, you know, you buy work on Amazon, you buy work on Amazon, sorry, you buy work online, or you buy work wherever you do it, but you don't necessarily speak to the person who's done it. And that's where you got that face-to-face, you know, that communication, which is cool. And I mean, I've met a lot of really nice people, you know, getting involved with Feast through, you know, the artisan market. It's people that necessarily I wouldn't have met if I didn't work on Feast. And I mean, that's good because every time you do see a lot of people who come down every month, and they're the people who, you know, it's really nice because you've got a relationship with them because you see them every month, and you know their artwork it's amazing because it's selling really fast, it's selling really well, and you know you've got that, you know, connection because every month you see them, they've got new work to show. So it's always cool to find out what they've been working on and what they're seeing, and of course every month we have new people coming down as well. It's not all the same people. It's a case of seeing what new content people are bringing to the table, and you know you've got again nice relationships with really, really passionate artists and designers, especially in your local area because West Norwood is actually an area where I actually went to primary school. So I know West Norwood quite well. It's changed definitely over the years, but it's pretty cool coming back to West Norwood because my girlfriend lives in West Norwood. So it's pretty cool coming back every now and again and, you know, seeing how it's changed over the years and, you know, different buildings and more people. And like I said, it's a very multicultural society in West Norwood itself. So again, seeing, you know, on a hot summer's day, it's really nice of seeing everyone out there, you know, having their burgers, having the, you know, screen printed T-shirts or whatever it was. But it's cool seeing people from various disciplines and various backgrounds, you know, coming together and doing it. And you maybe not necessarily find that anywhere else, but somewhere like West Norwood Feast.
And I think also it's such a fitting thing for this month's topic, harvest, where you talk about feast, harvest. They're food words, but also. Have you ever met anybody who was a separatist who seemed happy? I've never met anybody, you know.
Yeah.
When people come together, that's where happiness starts because we're all so much more alike than we are different. And, you know, like you're saying, you talk about buying art from somebody and, yeah, you buy it online and maybe you don't know the story behind it. You might like the way it looks. You might have your own opinion as to why someone did something. But then you talk to the artist, and the artist says, well, I was thinking this, I was thinking that. And you come away from that thinking that, here's a person who has similar emotional connections to the world as myself, and I'm more inclined to want to buy his stuff or her stuff now. I just want to ask you, as you move forward, and now we talked a lot about community here today, and we talked about community both with the profile book, with college, with being part of Feast. And I love Feast, by the way. And in New York, specifically Brooklyn, farmers markets and things like that are very common. And they're wonderful because they bring the people out of their houses and they meet with each other.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas as to how you're going to continue furthering that desire to connect people together in yourself as you move forward in your career and your life?
That's a really good question. I think the one thing as a starting block is to continue what I'm doing with Feast for sure. I mean, working with Feast and, you know, volunteering and working with people who, you know, I necessarily wouldn't work with, or who would have had opportunity, I should say, to work with if I was doing no volunteering work. You know, I mean, that's the cool thing about feast. You know, working with, you know, people from, you know, various backgrounds and coming together to do something really nice for the community. So from in my sort of aspiration, as it were, is to basically continue doing feast, continue, you know, doing you know, helping out with the flyer designs and helping out, you know, set up the stalls, but more importantly, trying very hard to get more people coming out of their shell, you know, especially in West Norway, because I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of artist designers, and you know, it's quite a confident thing to come out and to show your artwork and have a stall and to, you know, be there all day and to talk to people, because that in itself is quite daunting, you know. I mean, it's one thing to have your work online and to sell it, but it's another to have a stall and to speak to people and, you know, to do that. So I think trying to get people to come out of their shell more so, and, you know, finding people online who are in the local area and trying to get them to come down to Feast and to have their work showcased. I mean, that's one thing I'm personally, especially from an artist's point of view, quite determined to do, to speak to various artists and try and get them to come down. And yeah, I think working, like I said, working with, you know, various volunteers, I think that's quite a nice thing to do, especially when you know that you're doing it. Again, you're not doing it for a client, you're not doing it for a very high-end brand at all. It's for the community, it's for some, you know, for locals. You know, so you've got, you know, ages from, you know, young toddlers right down to pensioners. So you've got that vast age range going on, but you've also got that sense of, you know, wanting to belong somewhere, which, again, somewhere like West Norwood, which to me is a very close place to my heart, because obviously I went to primary school around here, so I know the area very, very well. It's nice to sort of see it grow, especially in an environment like Feast. So my next sort of few years, or whatever you call it, would be definitely to continue down this path of volunteering with Feast and to keep watching it grow, as it were, because it's definitely growing. You know, more people are coming down, more than we anticipated, for example. Yeah, so, which is fantastic. I can't ask for anything else, really. It's pretty cool.
You just brought something up that's very human, and that is the human desire to be a part of something that's larger than yourself, to connect to a larger community, kind of like we're talking about. For people that might be afraid to go put themselves out there, let me ask you, when you come home from a day of volunteering at Feast, how do you feel about yourself after talking to all those people? Do you feel good? Do you feel drained? How do you feel?
You feel awesome. I mean, you feel, I mean, Feast is one of the, I mean, first of all, Feast happens, it's the first Sunday every month. And I don't know whether we're just very, very lucky, but it's always a sunny day when it's Feast. I mean, we just had our Feast recently, last month, and it was beautiful. It was, I mean, weather-wise, it was nice, and to be outside and to, you know, to speak to people, and yeah, I mean, there's nothing like it. It feels amazing. I mean, especially when you, I mean, I obviously order the design work for Feast, so when you see your flyers, you know, being distributed out to young people and seeing your banners up, of course you've got that sense of, you know, first of all, from a designer's point of view, when you see your own design work being distributed and up in, you know, flyers, of course it's an awesome feeling, you know, naturally, you know, it's really, really cool. But it's even more cool when you see people coming together, like I said, from different nationalities, especially, and almost using Feast as a canvas, as it were, to, you know, to start conversations and speak to people. Because it's obvious that when you go to Feast, one thing you will easily be able to tell is that we've got a little, near the church bit where we have our food market, we have a lot of people who sit on the green, and, you know, you've got live music being played and you've got people eating their burgers or whatever they're eating. You can tell people are talking with one another, and they're obviously people they've just met just there. And I kind of think to myself, well, where else are you going to find places where you're going to speak to random strangers? Because people are quite reserved, and, you know, something like this I think is awesome. So whenever I go to Feast, I talk to people all the time. And I mean, last Feast just gone, I'm not an amazing dancer, but we had a live act happening, and in fact, it was Nicola, my girlfriend, and I. We both got up and did a bit of dancing as well, which was quite cool. So again, we would dance with people in our local community. Again, we would never have done that if we weren't involved with something like this. So for me, it's an awesome thing to do, and I have literally no intention of stopping it anytime soon. So yeah, it's great.
And people might think that Feast is derived from only the food aspect of at Feast at the farmers market, but really it's a feast of life in general. Like you're talking about, live music, people communicating. It's just fun. When you get out there and you talk to people, it's fun.
That's exact, and it's a Sunday. I mean, Sunday's a lazy day, so I mean, Sundays are never, you know, take it serious. I mean, it's very much a, you know, Feast is a good day. I mean, and also on a positive, especially on a Feast day. I mean, financially, you can come down with very little money and have a good time. You know, I mean, hopefully the weather's good and you can go there, and I mean, the food. First of all, I've got I've got a weakness for the burgers, which are there quite often. They've got these organic burgers, which are absolutely amazing. If you go there, I mean, you bring a bit of change. You come down, you speak to people, you have some food. There's live music. I mean, there's so much cool things that are provided, and it's at very little cost, I think, which is cool. I mean, especially for London. London's a very expensive place, like and when you've got your places like your West Norwood Feast, where there's a spread of really cool things to do by volunteers, I think utilize it. Make the most of it. Why not? Because I mean, like, the guys who I work alongside, I mean, they work so hard. I mean, just to give a bit of background, I mean, Lucy, who I work with, who basically Lucy was the one who had this idea of doing feast in the first place. She she works, she has her children, but she's still able to cultivate that attitude and that passion to want to get the community together. And for me, I mean, me and myself, I find that a massive inspiration. To see that people, even though they have their own, full-time jobs, or they might have families, that they're still able to, to really utilize their passions and to especially help the community. I think that is so very important to put that out there, and to see people who necessarily wouldn't speak to each other come together for an event such as this. I think it's amazing.
And the other truth about that is that you said, like, it's on a Sunday. You're going to go to work on a Monday morning. I feel like you're going to feel better about starting your work week off if you had a fun Sunday. You're going to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I go every feast, of course, and I mean, it's good because it starts at 10, finishes at 6, and 10 finishes at 4, I should say. And it's quite nice because, again, you've got that day where it's that mid-afternoon where people, it's a lazy Saturday, Sunday, for example. Saturdays, you go out, you do your thing, and Sundays are usually the evenings you get ready for work. So I think around Sunday afternoons is perfect to have something like feast, because you go out, you can have a drink in the park, you can, in the local square you can have some food, get some nice artwork, but it sort of sets you up really nice for the week. It sets me up for the week anyway, quite nice, because you go in to work and you feel quite chilled. It hasn't been quite a stressful weekend. It's been quite a nice one. And I mean, I always look forward to going to feast and then the next day getting to work, because the guys who I work with, they all know about feast, and it's quite cool, but they're like, oh, how was your weekend? And I was like, well, doing feast. And, I try very hard to try and get them to come down, and, they come down when they can. And it's really cool seeing, people who you work with coming into, areas where they necessarily wouldn't have been in usually. Because West Norwood's one of those towns where a lot of people go past on the train, but they don't necessarily get off the train to go into it. So I think feast is, from my perspective, feast has kind of put West Norwood on the map ever so slightly, which is a good thing. And, a lot of people who don't live in West Norwood are definitely coming in to experience West Norwood, to experience feast, I should say, firsthand, which is fantastic. And for anyone, again, obviously listening to this, who lives in the areas of South London, or, feast is a cool place. Don't take my word for it. Come down and see for yourself. Yeah,
right. Absolutely. I think the other thing about that, no matter how much you love your day job, if you are working a day job, you gotta have some eggs to put in other baskets and go do other things too, and because it's going to add to what your experiences are in terms of, let's say, as a designer, you might see something at Feast that inspires you on Wednesday of the next week as you're designing something.
Definitely.
The more we have to pull from, I think the more human we feel when we have more things going on.
Oh, for sure. No, definitely. I mean, little things like, for example, at the feast just 2 months ago, a really good friend of mine's, who's a photographer, came down, and, we took, again, all volunteering. So, she came down out of her own will, and it was lovely for her to use her skills. And we got some fantastic photography shots of the day, because one thing we never really had, sort of, I guess, before maybe I came along, taking over for Feast, was that we never really had an archive of really good photography. And one thing you'll notice is that Feast is I mean, there's always things going on, and I think it's very important to take, really nice snaps and share it through social media, so people get a real idea of what it's actually like to be there on a day like that. And we're very lucky now, because my friend came down and took some really nice shots, and a lot of those shots that we're using now, we're hopefully going to roll out into a new rebrand for the flyers. So I mean, that's the idea. Again, having more of a photographic approach to the flyers, I think, is very important. Especially when people don't know what Feast is or never heard of it. I mean, when you have a photograph which shows, the stalls, and it shows a clear shot of what it's going to be like, just a single shot, it could be that, or a series of them, just showing you exactly what it is. I think that speaks 1,000 words more than any text could. So yeah, that's kind of the next step in terms of where we kind of see Feast going a bit more photographic approach with the new rebrand of the designs. But again, like we said, Feast is one of those places where every month is a new thing. We don't know what's going to come up. And what's quite cool about Feast as well, we also do themes. So especially for the younger audience. So there's a lot of kids in the area of West Norwood. There's a lot of primary schools. So a lot of the schools get involved with, sometimes we do sort of plays, or we have music, sort of trombones, and we have people coming down and they can, they play their music, or we have art fairs and I mean, it's nice sort of seeing, obviously the kids playing and whatnot, but what's quite cool is obviously with the different themes that we have going on, again, it gets kids out of the home, out of bothering mum and dad, but into the area playing with other children, And again, like I said, coming back to the whole, multicultural society thing, again, it's really cool seeing, younger children of different backgrounds playing with other younger children of different backgrounds too. I think that's a really nice thing, as it were, to sort of see that happening. And yeah, I mean, every feast is always it's always a fun one. I mean, the next one coming up is based on history. So we're looking at sort of the British sort of culture and the British history and how it's come a long way, from, obviously we've got the Tudor times, we've got World War II, and we've got things like that. But we also got, obviously, Britain, as it were, today is very multicultural. And I think that's very, very important to try and celebrate that in the community, especially when, like I said, you've got obviously vast backgrounds, people from different cultures. But, when you've got such a vast amount of various backgrounds in one small community, I think the best way of celebrating that is through something like Feast, because obviously you've got the food aspect, you've got the music, you've got the art and design, and they're all things people enjoy. I think they're not corporate, they're not serious things. They're things that everyone loves food, first of all. So it doesn't matter what food you like. There's food to cater for you. Art, again, like we said, it's very much a case of opinion based, but you see a piece of artwork, I'm sure, people like it, people don't like it, but you're going to see artwork which draws a connection to yourself, and it can create a nice conversation. So I think to myself that, you can definitely utilize the various things we've got going on at Feast when you've got such a wide background of people in such a small area. I think it's amazing.
And I want to say really quickly that for somebody listening to this who's not in London, who might be saying, well, that's great, Kieron, that you can do this. I don't have Feast where I live. But there are various community programs, farmers markets, meetups, you name it. People are getting together all over the place. I think regardless whether or not you live in an urban environment, which by sheer amount of people, there's going to be more things going on.
Yeah.
But even in a suburban or a semi-rural environment, there are still things going on that we can meet up with people and we can make new connections. Because like you said, you come home from that feeling good.
Exactly. And I think one thing you mentioned about the idea of, on my case, obviously I jumped on board Feast, and Feast was already going before I came along. But, in your area, especially if you feel, there's not much in your area to do. I mean, especially from where I've lived in South London, there's always people of a design background. You just got to find them, first of all. And I think to myself, if something like Feast is not in your area, then why not start it yourself? Get down to your local town hall. I mean, Feast kind of started off simply with Lucy having an idea and getting a group of friends together to start something. And it's definitely grown over the years. And I think to myself, if someone can have a single idea to see something like this and see it unravel and flourish, then there's no reason why you can't do it yourself. If you've got that passion, that drive to want to see something, work really well, and you get a group of friends, and especially when it's volunteer based, I think, especially from a support or sponsoring point of view, they're very, especially in Feast itself, because Feast celebrates a lot of community. We've got a lot of sponsors from our local areas. So, for example, we've got the Mayor of London as one of the sponsors. And that in itself was is quite nice, because obviously, especially when you've got an event like Feast, they're very more open to want to sponsor that, because obviously there's no financial gain behind it, excuse me, whatsoever. It's all about trying to get people to come together. So again, there doesn't necessarily be a Feast in London. There could be something very similar in your local area, but if there isn't, make it happen, and then have that will, have a group of friends, and keep fighting for it. I think if you can try and get things like this in your local area, it will definitely bring people together. But more so, I think you will find your feet more, especially from a designer's point of view. I've learned a hell of a lot working on Feast, more than I ever thought I would. Obviously, like I said, I've worked at various agencies, but when you work on something like Feast from volunteering point of view, and like I said, I'm the lead creative on this. It's quite nice, because obviously, there's a lot of direction that I have the opportunity to direct, design, and to see it work, and again, to see a design start from X, Y, and to see it go, quite far. But I think that's very important in itself, to have that first-hand experience, to sort of see your work progress and to see it designed. Because for me, again, I'm young and I'm always learning forever. So for me, going to Feast, it's really cool sort of seeing people come along and to sort of see your designs. And I mean, it's always a bonus when you hear people say, "Oh, this is a really cool flyer," blah blah, and you feel good about yourself as a designer. I think anyone who has a piece of work and you hear good things about it, of course, you're on cloud nine. It's an amazing feeling. So yeah, for anyone who doesn't do it or has something in the area, they make it happen. Definitely make it happen.
I also want to say to people that now we're recording this conversation on a Sunday, and tomorrow you go to work.
Yep.
And you're going to work at a new job. And you're a designer at a small agency. But part of why you're there is all the extracurricular stuff that you're doing. It's helped you build that kind of confidence. So if people are saying to themselves as they're listening to this that we're speaking in theory and not in practicality, that's not true, because you do have a new job. You're living proof that this exists, and it's a way that you can do things and have a successful path to life. So I'm curious, now that you have this new job, how far down the road are you looking? Do you just trying to get through Monday, August 10th? Are you trying to look through the fall, the winter, the holidays? How far down the road are you looking right now?
James, I'll be honest with you, mate. I am very much I'm a thinker. I'm a thinker. I wish I was very much a happy-go-lucky, live for the moment. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I live for the day, but I do like to plan ahead. And I think in terms of, work-wise, I mean, I've started this new job. I mean, it's a very small agency, much smaller than where I've been at previously, which is, for me, is perfect, because I wanted to work somewhere much smaller where, you've got communication going on. I mean, when you work at a very big agency, which for my previous job, it was quite a big ad agency, and communication can get lost very easy. I mean, working where I'm at now is a very small group of people. They're lovely, lovely people, and that element of talking to people, I think that's so important. And I've got the opportunity to speak to people. And again, as I'm the lead creative at this very small place, a lot of the designs I do, I've got a lot of more direction on it, which I necessarily wouldn't have had in my previous place. So again, it comes down to the fact that, I've chosen to want to work somewhere smaller, because I kind of feel that, I mean, there are a lot of benefits of working somewhere smaller. I mean, at a bigger place, there are, of course, people thrive on wanting to work at big places. But, for anyone who's a bit like somewhere smaller, to have that nice connection with the people around you, that's a cool thing to do. And that's kind of my next sort of plan. I mean, I plan on staying here, for a good few years, and, set up a nice foundation, and, seeing definitely the brand as a whole progress. But also, whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to forever, hopefully, continue doing the volunteering for Feast. And yeah, that's my kind of that's my two babies at the moment. Feast is on one side, and then my other job's on the left. So that's my two babies at the moment. And of course, my girlfriend. I can't leave her out. That's part of the equation.
Exactly. Yes. Do you have anything that you particularly want to plug, be it your own personal things, be it information for Feast?
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, for anyone who's, especially in the area of London or West Norwood, yeah, Feast, you can go on westnorwoodfeast.com, and there's always updates as to, what's happening on the day, and, how you can get involved with Feast from a volunteering point of view. Because again, we're forever looking out for volunteers. I mean, that's very important. We've got a very good number of people who's involved, but you can never have too many volunteers. I think that's especially at a thing like this. So if you want to get involved, you're in the area of London, then feel free to go online, or you can email me directly, which is on my site, kieronlewis.com. So yeah, you're more than happy to do that. But yeah, we're always looking for volunteers, so to come down for that. And yeah, I think, like, going back to what we said about if there isn't like a Feast in your area, make it happen. I think that's a really cool thing to do. And, watching something like Feast or seeing Feast firsthand go into it, you feel good inside, you feel really, really good inside. And it kind of makes you want to do something similar if you can do volunteering, whether it's from a design point of view or it's from, setting up stalls or helping out. I think that's really, really good. And I think, again, volunteering to actually working full time, there's a massive difference, especially, I mean, it's obvious there's a massive difference, but there's that sense of achievement that when you're working not so much for financial gain, but working to help others, and especially for the community, there's very little that can sort of top that in terms of feeling good about yourself. And that's why I thought, from my perspective anyway. So yeah.
And you just also mentioned KieronLewis.com.
Yep, that's my website. Yeah, I mean, on my site, a lot of the stuff you'll see is very much self-directed projects. So it's not so much client work. I mean, I obviously I've worked with various clients, but I'm more wanting to showcase people things that are more personal to me. You know, you can work in your clients for your big brands, which are fine, but a lot of the stuff you'll see on my website, if you get a chance to go in it, is very much self-directed projects, which I've done, you know, whilst at university. And I mean, of course, Feast is on there too. So you've got a first-hand example of what Feast is, and there's some really cool images. So yeah, KieronLewis.com. If you get a chance to visit it, then please do.
And for those who are like me and they've never won a spelling bee in their life, that's KieronLewis.
That's the one. Yeah. It's Kieron, not Kieron. Everyone gets it wrong. Don't worry. Even Mum does too sometimes. So yeah, Kieron Lewis, KieronLewis. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to mention or say that I didn't cover or didn't ask you about?
I mean, the only thing in terms of what's going on in my life at the moment, I've actually entered. We spoke about it briefly, but a creative competition called Jack Wills. And on a positive, I found out on, I think it was Friday, I'm into semi-finals. So that's quite a cool thing. To give that background about what that is, to cut a long story short, Jack Wills as the brand, a very British brand. They're all about celebrating British culture. And there's various categories into what you can celebrate, and I'm under the creative category. And my idea is very much linked with Feast. So to cut a long story short, there's various rounds, but if you're one of the lucky 8 to win, you get some funding towards your idea. And to give you a bit of an idea of what I'm doing, I mean, my idea is linked towards wanting to create almost an end-of-year publication for Feast. So obviously we've got Feast, which happens every month. But what I've noticed, especially since I've been working on it only from February onwards, is that I've noticed the vast amount of cool artwork you see in store owners and whatnot. And I think to myself, for people who've missed out on Feast, who weren't able to come down, there isn't nothing to really sort of have like an archive, as it were, to sort of see what you've missed out on. And I kind of think if we can have like an end of year print of some sort to sort of showcase everything we've seen throughout the few months, then that's perfect. So that's my idea really. So if I'm quite fortunate to go far in this competition, then my idea is to put that funding towards creating like a publication which will kind of celebrate everything that Feast has to offer, especially from various of the hubs that we have, which is the food and then the artisan market. And we have a retro market too, which sort of celebrates a lot of the sort of old school retro, vinyl CDs and things like that. Really cool, quirky things that you might find in your dad's attic, basically, things like that. But people like that sort of stuff. So I think it's kind of cool if you can have some of that in a sort of editorial format, which is obviously when I want to create a print book. So yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment now. And so yeah, I've got my interview for the judges, which is on the 3rd of September. So so wish me luck on that, hopefully, and I'll let you know how it gets on.
Well, 1, congratulations for making it to the semifinals. Yes. 2, is there anything that listeners can do to help you advance, or is it now just judges?
No, it's just judges right now. I think Dragon's Den. That's the only way I can imagine it. But yeah, again, obviously I'm nervous. I'm excited more so. But I think because again, Feast is something that I'm quite passionate about, and I know Feast very well. That whoever I talk to, whether it's 1 judge or 3, I can hopefully go in there confident, knowing that what I'm talking about, I know it quite well. And I think to myself, that's what I'm going in there knowing. I'm not going in there. Obviously, it'd be nice to win it and to have that funding towards it. But I'm going in there to have the idea to actually plug in and to showcase Feast as a whole, and to showcase the judges, what Feast has to offer. And again, as soon as I leave from that interview or however it's placed, I'm going to say to them, come down to Feast next month if you can, because it's in South London. So again, if I don't get it, at least we've got people to come down for Feast. So that's a positive somewhere.
Absolutely. Kieron, I wanted to thank you for sitting down with me, 1, but also for showing that taking chances in life can be fun. It's not this big daunting task. It's just getting out there and being a person and connecting to other people. And it's like you just said, you're entering this competition, you're going to go speak to the judges. And while that might be something that would be so nerve-wracking to others that they might vomit from it, you're thinking, hey, at the end of this, by the way, guys, why don't you come down to Feast?
Exactly, yeah. We'll see how that goes. No, it's been a pleasure, James. Thank you.
Thank you.